Humanity lives its usual measured life. Major political issues are being resolved at the White House, while beyond its walls, ordinary people make plans for tomorrow, unaware of the changes that await them. But a single morning changes everything. For unknown reasons, all carriers of the Y chromosome in the city suddenly die. In other words, all male beings, from animals and birds to men, perish. Among them is the president of the country. The only surviving males are a young, talentless illusionist named Yorick Brown and his pet capuchin monkey, Ampersand. In the event of an emergency, Regina Oliver was supposed to take over the presidency. However, at the time of the catastrophe, she was abroad, and there has been no word from her since. Naturally, the absence of leadership leads to dire consequences. Riots erupt in the city as women, panicking, begin to destroy everything around them, not knowing how to go on living. Tension rises within the White House as well. The staff realize that within 2 weeks they will be completely trapped. Coal and clean water supplies will run out. Food won't last long either. Animals can no longer reproduce, and growing enough reserves in a short time is simply impossible. And this doesn't affect just one city, it will impact everyone. Senator Jennifer Brown takes the reins of leadership. She is soon approached by Agent Sarah Bergen, a member of the president's secret task force, designated 355. Sarah reports that she was sent here due to some real threat, but didn't have time to receive detailed instructions about her new mission. During all this time, Yorick stays in his apartment to avoid becoming a target for desperate women. However, as supplies start to dwindle, he decides to leave a note for his girlfriend and venture out to scout the situation. At the same time, Senator Brown sends Sarah on a mission to find her daughter, Hero, who has not made contact since the disaster. But Hero isn't rushing to hide in a safe place. Instead, she travels to a refugee center to help those in need, including the wife of her deceased lover. After that, Hero returns to the hideout where her friends are gathered. At first glance, it seems there are still some surviving men in the city, but it quickly becomes clear that these men were born in female bodies and have transitioned through hormone therapy. Therefore, the mysterious plague had no effect on them. In New York City, evacuation begins, and heavy military vehicles patrol the streets. Yorick has to hide to avoid being caught by the military. Still, he manages to sneak into a local bar to leave another message for his girlfriend. Yorick continues to hope that she is alive and that upon seeing his autograph, she might return home. Usually, Yorick manages to stay under the radar, but this time things don't go according to plan. His capuchin escapes, forcing Yorick to chase after him. The restless Ampersand descends into the flooded subway and disappears into the dirty water filled with the corpses of the dead. Fighting his disgust, Yorick decides to follow, unwilling to lose his only friend. At one point, Yorick thinks he sees another living man nearby, but it appears to be just a vision. Shining his flashlight around, he sees nothing but dirty water. After climbing out of the water, Yorick sneaks into a clothing store to change. However, he fails to stay hidden. The shopkeepers spot the naked visitor and freeze in shock. One of the women suggests capturing the guy and handing him over to the authorities for a nice reward, but ultimately, taking pity on him, they let Yorick go, giving him a set of clean clothes. The stress Yorick has endured nearly drives him insane. Looking through the videos on his phone, he recalls the day Ampersand came into his life, and hearing his friend's voice, the little monkey emerges from his hiding spot. The duo returns home, feeling safe there, but when Yorick hears the door opening, he realizes he was wrong. Someone has broken into the apartment and he'll have to defend himself. Arming himself with a guitar, he hides behind the corner, but he doesn't get a chance to strike. Sarah proves faster and stronger. She disarms Yorick and after a few hours delivers him to his mother, Senator Brown. The pilots who brought Yorick to the White House are locked away. Sarah explains that they need to rest after a long flight, but everyone understands the real reason. No one must find out that the new president's son has survived. Otherwise, suspicions of conspiracy could arise and lead to even greater chaos. Yorick himself is not thrilled about the situation either. After getting some rest from everything he has been through, he decides to look around, but his curiosity almost leads to disaster. In an abandoned office, he is discovered by Marla, the widow of the deceased president. Jennifer and Sarah arrive just in time and manage to make it seem like Marla is suffering from a mental breakdown. Meanwhile, Yorick manages to hide, but the threat hanging over the conspirators grows, and Sarah insists that the boy must be taken out of the White House. The late president's daughter tries to find out exactly what her mother saw that night. Jennifer assures the girl that it was nothing but a hallucination, but Kimberly suspects that President Brown is lying to her. Jennifer Brown instructs her aides to find a geneticist who can examine Yorick and figure out what happened on the planet and why he and the capuchin survived. The president plans to bring specialists to the White House, but Sarah remains firm. It's too dangerous, and they must get Yorick out of the city. The agent is ready to take on this risky mission, but it must be done as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, in Israel, a wounded woman regains consciousness. Upon learning that all the men on Earth have died, she declares that she must now claim the presidency of the United States. Nora Brady, a former presidential advisor, is forced to wander with her young daughter, Mackenzie. Having lost her husband and sons and left without any means to survive, Nora struggles to pull herself together, but ultimately decides to fight to save herself and her daughter. News reaches the White House that Regina Oliver, the main candidate for the presidency, is alive. This leads to a split among the staff. One part remains loyal to Jennifer Brown, while the other sides with Regina Oliver and Kimberly, the president's daughter. Given the situation, Jennifer has no choice but to agree with Sarah and allow her son to be moved to a safer location. Sarah enlists the pilots who had previously transported Yorick, motivating them by awarding hero stars and promising eternal glory if they succeed in their mission. The only way to secretly get Yorick out of the building is in a cart with dead bodies. The boy tries to refuse and come up with another plan, but Sarah remains adamant. They cannot afford to take risks, and Yorick will have to endure it. The agent successfully smuggles Yorick out and transfers him to a helicopter. She intends to pilot it herself. A second helicopter, carrying only female pilots, will fly ahead as a diversion. However, as soon as the helicopters reach a certain altitude and disappear from view, the escort helicopter loses control and explodes into a shower of burning debris. The sight horrifies Yorick, but Sarah remains calm, knowing this was the price of the pilot's silence. After several hours of flight, Sarah and Yorick land in a forest to take a short break. The agent, unable to bear the smell, asks the boy to undress. After riding in the cart with the corpses, he smells terrible, and it would be better to wash his clothes before continuing their journey. Meanwhile, Yorick's sister, Hero, sets out to find a safe place, accompanied by her friend, a trans man. Along the way, they stop at a looted store, hoping to find some food, but instead they encounter the frightened Nora and Mackenzie. Examining the girl's leg, Hero notices a serious infected wound and asks Nora to allow her to provide first aid so that they can continue moving. Back in the forest, Sarah and Yorick's camp is attacked by a gang of wild looters. Sarah tries to distract them and talk them down, but to avoid any risk, Yorick puts on a mask and waves a stick to scare the girls away, fearing that they might ruin their plan. The unexpected guests leave, but Sarah and Yorick decide not to stay put. They make their way to the nearest town, where they trade a helicopter generator and a couple of grenades for a motorcycle. While Sarah inspects and checks the motorcycle, Yorick, forgetting all safety rules, runs off to a deserted spot, convinced that he saw his girlfriend Beth in the crowd. This foolish act lands him in a trap. He is surrounded by female police officers who tear off his mask and discover his secret. Sarah has to intervene to protect her companion. Fighting off the officers, she manages to drag Yorick away, but as soon as they get a free moment, Sarah stops the bike to bring the loser back to his senses and remind him how important the mission is, a mission he had just nearly sabotaged. Meanwhile, Hero, her friend, and their new companions find shelter for the night in an abandoned women's shelter. Hero confides in Nora that her daughter has serious medical problems. She needs antibiotics, but pharmacies have long been looted, along with the empty houses. Stricken by fear and helplessness, Nora steps outside so that her daughter doesn't see her tears. But outside, she faces a new trial. Horsewomen appear in the courtyard, claiming to be the rightful owners of the house, and they don't seem too happy about uninvited guests. The rest of the visitors are quickly discovered by the horsewomen as well. They are herded into the stables to get rid of extra mouths to feed. However, Nora notices something that might save them. One of the horsewomen turns out to be wounded, and Nora asks Hero to examine the girl and provide help. Hero tries her best, but the gunshot wound is too severe, and there's nothing available but duct tape and a couple of rubber gloves. Hours of makeshift surgery don't bring any improvement. The girl's condition worsens, and the leader of the women's gang, Roxanne, decides to end her suffering. To Nora's surprise, Roxanne proves to be kind and understanding. She invites the guests to stay in their house for the night and promises to provide the antibiotics needed for Mackenzie. As the group follows Roxanne, Hero realizes that antibiotics are just a small part of what the gang controls. They own an entire shopping mall stocked with supplies. Meanwhile, Sarah and Yorick continue making their way toward Boston, hoping to find geneticist Allison Mann, but at the city's entrance, they encounter a military checkpoint, heavily guarded and armed with tear gas. Sarah proposes that they split up. She will distract the soldiers while Yorick and Ampersand sneak around the blockade. Meeting Boston's colleagues, Sarah quickly realizes that the absence of men hasn't rid the world of crime. Rebel groups constantly attack Harvard, trying to break in and find answers to their questions. The plan works. While Sarah keeps the soldiers busy, Yorick slips into a headquarters building to hide. However, there he falls into the hands of rebels, risking exposure. Luckily for him, the rebels mistake him for a trans man and let him go. even telling him where he can find his people, get the necessary hormones, and hide. At last, Yorick and Sarah locate Allison Mann's apartment and then her office at Harvard. The geneticist is not very pleased to see strange visitors, but the moment Yorick removes his mask, she immediately understands why they are there. Mann realized she must study the boy in his capuchin, but it's impossible to work at Harvard. There's no equipment or biological samples left. Therefore, she suggests the only possible option, traveling to San Francisco to use the lab there. Sarah agrees to yet another dangerous journey, but secretly sabotages their radio, cutting off their only way of contacting the president. She later uses the radio's malfunction as an excuse to leave, asking Yorick to watch over the geneticist while she finds another way to communicate with the White House. Meanwhile, political infighting over power resumes, but not everyone is focused on that. One of Jennifer Brown's aides, Christine, falls ill and fears she has lost her baby. However, an ultrasound reveals the opposite. The pregnancy is progressing, and it's quite possible the child is a boy. Sarah breaks into a stranger's house, only to find that the homeowner is just as skilled and dangerous as the secret agent herself. A fight breaks out between the two women, but once they allow each other to speak, it turns out that both intruders work for the same organization and came here for the same reason, to find the homeowner and put a bullet in her. After learning about the helicopter crash, Jennifer is beside herself with worry, but Christine tries to calm her down. The search team reported that they found the bodies of only 2 pilots. The relief doesn't last long. The president realizes that Sarah most likely staged the crash to eliminate unnecessary witnesses. A terrible thought strikes her. Yorick is in the company of a dangerous criminal, and there's no telling what Sarah might do to him. Regina Oliver, the main contender for the presidency, is brought to the White House. Taking advantage of this, Kimberly starts plotting a coup to get rid of the hated Jennifer Brown and eventually seize power herself. Meanwhile, Allison Mann confesses to Yorick that she isn't confident about the success of her research. She doesn't know if they'll have the resources to find out why the men died or whether it will even be possible to revive the male species. One thing is certain, hard times lie ahead for both Yorick and his capuchin. Soon they will become experimental subjects. Sarah returns to the office and proposes that they set off. For some reason, she lies to Yorick, claiming that she spoke to his mother and that they now have permission to travel to San Francisco. The trio sets off on their journey, unaware that a military patrol is already circulating around the city with Sarah's photo. While the women wait for a safe window between the gas deployments, Yorick decides to visit the place the rebels had told him about, a community of transgender people where he can remove his mask and show his real face without fear. Sarah flies into a rage over Yorick's latest stunt, but it soon becomes clear that the real threat isn't him, it's her. The patrol arrives at the community and shows everyone her picture. The trio manages to escape from under the hunters' noses and hides in a church, where Sarah is forced to admit that she has no communication with the White House and has been making all decisions on her own. Meanwhile, Hero, her friend, and Nora with her daughter continue to live in Roxanne's commune. At first glance, it seems they found a true paradise. There's food, medicine, and safety. But when Nora tries to take her daughter away from another radical feminist meeting, Roxanne explodes with rage. She reminds them that they are guests and must follow her rules and obediently listen to everything she says. Moreover, Roxanne does everything she can to make young Mackenzie hate men and join their movement. Another such meeting is interrupted by a battle alarm. The women quickly set up barricades and arm themselves to defend their supermarket. The enemies turn out to be a small group of desperate women with a little girl. Roxanne goes out to meet them, but she no longer accepts outsiders into her commune. Not even a child evokes her sympathy, and she drives the refugees away, refusing to help. Meanwhile, Allison finds a flyer among Sarah's things. It's a wanted notice for the agent. She suggests that Yorick should run away to avoid being endangered by Sarah, but the boy refuses to betray his friend, even though he knows she is hiding something from them. That evening, Roxanne gathers her commune for some kind of celebratory event. At the beginning of the ceremony, she tells the crowd about Laura, one of the members of the movement, which Roxanne proudly calls the Amazons. At first, everything seems innocent, but as the celebration progresses, Hero and her companions begin to sense that something very strange is happening. Laura is first sprinkled with dirt, then submerged into a bathtub, and when she surfaces, everyone begins calling her by a new name, Athena. Finding all of this extremely unsettling, Sam, Hero's trans friend, leaves the hall. One of the movement members follows him to warn against clashing with Roxanne, but instead, she only gets herself into trouble. She is immediately summoned for a conversation. Back at the White House, Jennifer receives a report that the search group has located Sarah and is preparing an ambush. The president begins to worry that the scouts might also find her son, but by that time, Allison manages to convince Yorick to leave, and the pair escape into the forest. Tension rises. The trackers try to catch up with Yorick and Allison, but Sarah neutralizes the soldiers and destroys their radios, cutting off the signal to the White House. That night, Nora wakes up to the sound of screams. Trying not to make any noise, she peeks out of the room and sees a crowd of Amazons punishing a girl for speaking to Sam. The smiling beauties turn out to be ruthless, but Nora decides not to intervene. She wants her daughter to stay safe, and for that, she is willing to play by their rules. Sarah finds a van, and the group continues their journey to San Francisco, despite Yorick and Allison's attempt to escape. Naturally, this causes even more tension among them. Sarah no longer trusts her companions, which leads to another disaster. She falls asleep at the wheel, and the vehicle crashes off the road. After climbing out of the wreck, Allison tries to find Sarah, but she's no longer in the driver's seat. Instead, a convoy of military vehicles soon appears nearby, and they have nothing to do with the White House. Jennifer is informed about the incident, as well as the fact that among the fugitives was a man. While the president struggles to deflect suspicions away from her son, Yorick regains consciousness in an unfamiliar house, in bed with an equally unfamiliar woman. Getting out of bed, he goes in search of his capuchin, but instead encounters the people who brought him to this place. The residents of the ranch where Yorick has been taken seem peaceful enough. However, they refuse to tell him where his companions are. Meanwhile, the girls wake up in a jail cell, completely unaware of where they are or how to escape. Jennifer addresses the surviving citizens of the city, asking them to agree to evacuation and not to incite chaos. In the crowd, the president spots a familiar face, Beth, her son's girlfriend, who all this time had been in a hospital. While Jennifer talks to Beth, Kimberly continues to secretly persuade Regina to overthrow the usurper and take her place. Despite the friendly atmosphere, Yorick isn't set free. On the contrary, he is thrown into a cell with the girls so the community can decide what to do with the prisoners. Meanwhile, more grim news arrives. A new strain of flu has been discovered in Greece. Jennifer immediately dives into addressing this new crisis, but is also faced with another. Marla shows up at the command center, demanding to know if the rumors about Yorick are true. The waiting inside the cell becomes unbearable, and tensions flare up again. Yorick and Sarah end up fighting, but the argument quickly ends when the heavy door creaks open and a woman from the settlement appears. She informs the prisoners that a decision has been made. They will be allowed to stay until Sarah recovers. After that, they'll be escorted out of the city so they can continue their journey to San Francisco. The ranch residents provide Sam with a separate bedroom. Before she drifts off to sleep, she warns Yorick to stay alert and trust no one. But Yorick is convinced that Sam is exaggerating the danger. The ranch seems lively, and everyone appears peaceful and kind. Moreover, they have plenty of food, electricity, and water, luxuries that are rare in most regions now. Meanwhile, Marla's grief becomes unbearable. She climbs to the roof and takes a step into the void, hoping to reunite with her husband and sons. She leaves a note for her daughter, apologizing and urging her to be strong. At the same time, Beth returns to the city, but instead of going back to her friends, as she had told Jennifer, she heads straight for a rebel truck, joining a group planning an assault on the White House. Back in Roxanne's commune, Kate, one of the Amazons, tries to leave the group, but Roxanne reminds her of the harsh rules, shooting the fleeing girl in the back. However, Roxanne doesn't confess this to the others. She frames the incident as an attack by nomads. To prevent further desertions, Roxanne orders everyone into intensive firearms training. Moreover, Roxanne plans to kick out the guests. Nora learns of this from one of the members and rushes to the leader, begging her to allow her and Mackenzie to stay. No amount of pleading works on Roxanne. She gives Nora a few more days, after which the woman and her daughter must leave the commune. Roxanne remembers how she first found this place and built the Amazon community. From day one, she had been its sole leader. Nothing had changed since then. Roxanne continues to dictate the rules and convinces the residents that beyond her protection lies only danger and death. Every day, she holds meetings where the women are required to recall the worst deeds of men and reinforce the idea that Roxanne is their only source of safety. Sam is banned from these gatherings and begins preparing to leave, planning to occupy the guest houses by the lake and start his own community. But Hero has already started falling under Roxanne's influence. She's no longer sure she wants to leave. Roxanne witnesses an emotional argument between Hero and Sam. Seizing the opportunity, she manipulates Hero again, convincing her that even a not real man shouldn't speak to her like that. In the end, the friends part ways, and that night Roxanne drives Sam out, allowing him to take a little food with him. The next morning, Roxanne doesn't tell Hero that she was the one who let Sam go. Instead, she does everything to comfort the girl, even organizing a farewell celebration in honor of saying goodbye to all things male. The festival ends with a noisy and cheerful party enjoyed by everyone except Nora. Nora never manages to fit in with the group, and to get her revenge, she sets fire to the shopping mall while everyone sleeps. The Amazons manage to survive, but their supplies are destroyed. Nora hides her satisfaction behind a mask of sorrow, blending into the grieving crowd. Pleased with her actions, Nora prepares for a night escape. She heads into the forest to check her supplies, but instead finds a police car by the river, filled with bodies. It becomes obvious that Roxanne is not who she claims to be, and Nora decides to use this information to her advantage. Choosing a moment when they are alone, Nora confronts Roxanne about her discovery. She promises to stay silent. In exchange for privileges, she and her daughter must always have access to the best food, protection, and shelter. But Nora offers more than just silence. She promises to help Roxanne retain control over the group even after the loss of their supplies, ensuring that people won't abandon her. Roxanne accepts Nora's terms. She gathers her followers and delivers a loud, fiery speech, promising that they will overcome all hardships and conquer the world. Meanwhile, Sarah slowly recovers and even resumes her training, although she continues to suffer from hallucinations and visions. Despite this, she keeps a close eye on Yorick, who seems to have once again let his guard down and placed too much trust in the villagers. Sarah's suspicions grow when one of the villagers approaches her, asking suspicious questions about a device found in the wrecked vehicle. The girl refuses to reveal what it is, but she clearly doesn't want Yorick to find out about the beacon. On Roxanne's orders, Hero finds another settlement, a group of women who have created a memorial to honor the memory of men. Hiding behind the guise of protecting women's rights, Roxanne organizes a raid to steal food and supplies from the settlement. The Amazons unleash hell on the inhabitants of the memory town, but Nora quickly realizes something is wrong. Instead of simply taking food and water, the savages are destroying everything in a frenzy. Nora doesn't like what she sees and tries to reason with Roxanne, but the deranged leader insists that this is the right path. Fully recovered from her illness, Regina Oliver prepares to overthrow Jennifer Brown. She instructs her allies to be ready for a coup within 30 minutes. Seeking additional support, Regina turns to Kimberly. But after her mother's death, Kimberly has lost her fire and no longer wants to be involved in the rebellion. At the same time, under the government building, Beth's team plants explosives. Jennifer Brown is summoned to the command center, where she is accused of hiding information about Yorick. To protect her pregnant aide, Jennifer is forced to confess, admitting that her son survived. She also reveals that he was sent to a geneticist in the hope of saving humanity, although no one knows if he has reached his destination. Even those who had supported Jennifer the day before now side with Regina. They demand that the liar step down and hand over power to the true president. But the discussion is interrupted. An explosion rocks the building, and it becomes clear that intruders have broken in. The rebels, led by Beth, storm the building. Making their way through the underground tunnels, they clash with the politicians, and the president's security service is forced to lay down their arms and surrender. Jennifer recognizes Beth despite her balaclava, but the girl manages to signal her to stay silent and not expose her. Regina's desire to be president vanishes the moment danger appears. Thus, Jennifer Brown has to take responsibility and negotiate with the rebels, responding to their demands. The rebels move the hostages out of the control center, hoping to leave the building with them without encountering the feral townspeople. At that moment, Regina begins to assert that she is the rightful president and everyone must obey her. In a fit of rage, she accuses everyone of betrayal, attempts to expose her former allies, including Kimberly, and, as the final blow, announces that Jennifer Brown's son is alive. One of the rebels silences the hysterical woman with a bullet to the forehead, but the damage is already done. Her words have been spoken, and most importantly, the rebels' plans are now thrown into chaos. Meanwhile, Yorick's prolonged stay at the settlement leads to trouble. The women, starved for male attention, begin hunting him, hoping to spend time with the last surviving man. Taking advantage of the moment when Yorick is distracted and Allison is socializing with the locals, Sarah sneaks into the forest to destroy the beacon that had been transmitting her location all this time. The rebels fail to evacuate the hostages in time. A second rival faction releases tear gas through the ventilation system. Gunfire erupts in the hallways, people scatter in panic, and those who don't escape in time fall dead to the floor. Beth secretly removes Jennifer's handcuffs and tries to lead her away. The president doesn't have time to save her pregnant aide, but Kristen is not left alone. Kimberly stands up for her. Through the underground parking lot, the girls manage to reach an exit. At the memory town, among personal belongings, Roxanne finds a notebook listing the names of all surviving men. Now the leader has a new goal: to hunt down and destroy them all, to free the planet. The Amazons decide to start with the young man they had already seen once, the one now living in the nearby village. Nora shows Roxanne his portrait. It's none other than Yorick Brown. Beth gives Jennifer her uniform. Before they part ways, Jennifer tells the girl that Regina's words were true. Yorick is alive. Roxanne and Nora set out to find the village where they believe the surviving man is hiding. But sensing danger, Sarah urges her companions to leave quickly. The news of their imminent departure doesn't please Yorick, but he's not ready to argue with the agent. However, it's unlikely they'll disappear in time. Roxanne has already located the estate and is preparing her squad to attack within a few hours. During a meeting, two nomads burst into Roxanne's camp. From them, Hero learns about the president's death. Not knowing that the title of president didn't belong to her mother, Hero assumes it was her who died. In reality, Jennifer is still alive. Having mourned her daughter, she prepares to flee with Beth. The president can no longer stay in the city, where a hunt has already begun for her. That night, Sam sneaks into Jennifer's house. The woman immediately recognizes her daughter's friend, and together they attempt to escape, but the house is surrounded. Kristen and Kimberly find refuge in an abandoned barn. Waking up early in the morning, Kimberly tells her friend that she knows how they can all be saved. They need Yorick to continue the human race, and Yorick, it seems, agrees. That night, he sleeps with one of the village women who had long set her sights on him. Their idyll is shattered when the Amazons, led by the crazed Roxanne, storm the village streets, demanding that the man be handed over. Sarah jolts awake at the sound of gunfire. She orders Yorick's new girlfriend to get him out of the house while she stays behind to repel the attack. Realizing they are heavily outnumbered, Sarah steps outside with her hands raised, pretending to be frightened of the intruders. She brings out the local trans man, passing him off as the real survivor. A serious firefight breaks out on the main street. The sounds of gunfire distract Sarah's convoy, and she uses the moment to disarm her enemies and escape. Even little Mackenzie joins the fight, trying to prove to Roxanne that she deserves her place in the commune. Meanwhile, Hero catches up with the group of escapees. She fires at them until Yorick turns around. Recognizing her brother, Hero freezes, but Yorick's girlfriend, unaware of the family connection, shoots Hero. Wounded, Hero manages to tell her brother about their mother's death and warns him that the Amazons intend to destroy him. She urges Yorick to flee and, to buy him time, eliminates one of her own sisters in arms. The firefight in the city rages on. But unexpectedly, Nora raises her hands and steps into the center, declaring their surrender. This sends Roxanne into a frenzy, but no one cares anymore. Hero tells Nora that Yorick is alive. This gives the women new strength, and upon returning to their camp, Nora decides to depose Roxanne and open the girl's eyes to the truth. But words alone don't work. Roxanne continues to provoke Nora until Nora shoots her in the chest. The Amazons, stunned, raise their weapons, but Nora quickly finds comforting words for them. Hero steps forward to stand at Nora's side, and from that moment on, the community has a new leader. Sarah walks several kilometers and finally finds Yorick and Allison. The boy is devastated. He feels like he has lost everyone he loved and no longer has a reason to live. Listening to her friend, Sarah confides that she understands him better than he thinks. She lost her parents in childhood too. Sarah then tells Yorick that if he wants, he can walk away. She had been following Jennifer's orders, and now that Jennifer is presumed dead, their agreement is technically void. But Yorick refuses. He asks Sarah to become his trainer so he can stop being a burden and learn to protect himself. Meanwhile, Jennifer, Beth, and Sam find themselves locked in an empty room under surveillance cameras. They don't know it yet, but they have been captured by Sarah's former superior from the Secret Service. Following the signal from the beacon, Sarah leads her friends to a fueled vehicle. Besides gasoline, the car contains everything needed for scientific research and a map with a marked route. Where does it lead? For now, that will remain a mystery.